Hi, we're going to make a pecan pie cheesecake for the holidays. And this is one of those instances where we take the best of the pecan, the best of the cheesecake, and put them all together. And we actually lower the overall carb count because we're stretching the pecans and all that sweetener with a little bit of cheesecake, or a lot. Let's start by making our crust. We'll talk as we go. I'm going to start with 3/4 of a cup of almond flour. And this is just the Honeyville finely milled almond flour. And then I'm using oat fiber because you know I love this stuff. And this is 1/3 cup of oat fiber. So 1/3 cup oat fiber and 3/4 cup of almond flour. There's about 24 carbohydrates, 24 total carbs, and 1 cup of almond flour. So I love using the oat fiber. Not only does it give it a really nice floury mouthfeel, but it also cuts out some of the carbohydrates because it's pure insoluble fiber. The other thing you need to know about oat fiber, not oat flour, oat fiber, is there are really only 2 brands I like. Life Source is one, and it's cheapest usually on Nutrition, and Trim Healthy Mama is the other. I'm adding a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. The reason I use those is there are other brands that are really strongly flavored, and they honestly have a really icky taste. So if you've tried oat fiber in the past and you had a brand that wasn't Life Source or Trim Healthy Mama, then that may be why. I don't get paid to say that. It's not affiliation or a sponsorship, but it's truthful. This is 1/2 cup of granulated sweetener. I'm using sucrin. I really love the Sucrin Plus and the Sucrin 1, and that's what I'm using in this. So I've got my sweetener, my oat flour, my almond flour, my oat fiber, my almond flour, and a little salt. And then I'm going to add some butter. Now this is 1.5 ounces of melted butter. This is unsalted, and that's why I put the salt in. If you're using salted butter, then you want to use, probably not put the salt in as I did. Okay, the last thing I'm going to put is vanilla extract. And that's just maybe a 1/4 teaspoon or so. What we're doing is kind of layering up the flavors. This is going to be crumbly, and that's okay. You don't expect it to not be. And I just stir it around until it kind of gets like sand. That's how Jonathan has described it in the past. It's kind of like sand. So if you ever made mud pies, enjoyed that time as a child, then you might like doing this. And sometimes instead of even mixing it in a bowl, I'll just put it into my springform pan. Now I'm using a 9-inch springform pan to make this because I think it'll just work the best with the topping to keep it all kind of together. If you don't have a springform pan, you may be able to make it in a 9x13 baking dish, a glass baking dish. You can try it. But I really like using the springform pan for my cheesecakes. Okay, now you can see it's still really, really crumbly. And that's okay, because we're just going to press it in. We don't pre-bake it, I don't think. I have to check my directions. And always, 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 when I'm doing a recipe, sometimes my mind goes ahead of what I'm doing next, and I say things wrong. So always look in the written description, the video description. Sometimes you have to click on show more or the down arrow to see it, but always check the written recipe because I do include that. So it's all really crumbly. Get that off. And I'll just press it in. And pretty much, I mean, you can use all kinds of things to do this, but your hands work the best. David, you check the recipe, or do I bake it? No baking, okay. I thought that was the case. I have not made this recipe in a while. Now, this is super, super simple, so I'm gonna hand it off to David. Because it's simple, simple, simple. And he's gonna press it in. When he goes up the side, now this is a pretty thick crust, and so he's going to go up the side just a little bit, not like all the way up, but maybe just an inch or so in the springform pan. So let me hand that off to him so you don't have to watch me press that out. So let me stop just a minute. I'm going to wipe this up and get everything ready to make the filling. Okay, let's put our cheesecake filling together. This is so simple. I'm using 3 8-ounce bricks of cream cheese. And I'm not cooking if I'm not making a mess, right? So you see that get all over there. Then I'm going, so that was the first 8-ounce brick. There's the second 8-ounce brick, and you got to get all the goodness out. As I start to cook for the holidays, I always think, how could I cook without cream cheese? And I probably should do less dairy, but I use so much cream cheese. Thankfully, I can find it on sale often or at Sam's Club. And this is the Philly cream cheese that has 1 total carbohydrate per serving. When they changed the formula and it was more than that, it really stressed me out. And so I was looking everywhere and buying a little more expensive cream cheese in order to get the lower carbohydrate. Now I'm going to step away from this as I mix it up so you can hear me, but I want this to go in the stand mixer. I want it to go for quite a bit. I want to make sure that it's going to be fluffy, creamy. I don't think you can overmix a cheesecake. Maybe you can. And I love using my stand mixer because I don't have to stay with it. You can use a hand mixer, but it's just easier to put it in there. And I think I already missaid something. The sweetener and the crust, David did a great job, didn't he? The sweetener and the crust is only 1/3 cup. I think I called it a half cup, but it's only a 1/3 cup. Half cup would be way too sweet. But he's got the crust. And also I failed to point out that I lined it with parchment paper. So parchment paper is covering it, and that way when the cheesecake is done and I separate it, I simply take it off. Simply take it off the pan for serving. Okay, let me add the sweetener. This is 1/2 cup, which is why I got confused. So let me put the sweetener in there. And from time to time, when you're using the stand mixer, you want to turn it off and just scrape the bottom or scrape the sides. Even though it's supposed to get in there, it doesn't always do that. Now, Jonathan's out riding a bike around the neighborhood, so he's probably going to come in slamming the door any second. But we'll just keep on going like we always do. So I'm creaming the sweetener in with the cream cheese. And I'm going to add my eggs. I'm going to add the eggs one at a time. And I just want to give them each a lot of time to be beaten, to be well beaten. I'm just messing up more dishes. And again, just let it go. If you're at home doing it, you can do it however you want. But if you have a stand mixer in particular, letting it go for several minutes is not generally a problem. Here's the second egg. Now notice that the cream cheese and the eggs have been sitting out. They've been at room temperature for probably, 45 minutes to an hour before I started making this. It takes a while to set up for the videos. And after that second egg, I'm going to stop and scrape down the sides. The cream cheese especially is really thick and will stick to the bottom and the sides of my stand mixer. Even if you're using a hand mixer, then you probably have to stop and scrape down the sides too. And that's okay. All right. It's starting to smell really good. Can't wait to share this recipe with you guys. I think your families will like it too. All right, let's keep mixing, and that needed to be done. The cream cheese was up along the sides. These are really simple ingredients. I'm going to put the last egg in. And then I'm going to add some vanilla extract. And you know that there's no such thing as too much for me. But I'm only using 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Normally I put that last, but I do have 2 more ingredients to add. I've got heavy cream and I've got sweetener. You can use stevia or whatever liquid sweetener you prefer. I'm using my super drops and I'm doing 4 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's stop and scrape it down. Let's stop and scrape it down once more before I add the last ingredient, which is 1/3 cup of heavy cream. We're almost finished with the cheesecake part. And what we do, once we get the cheesecake part made, we're going to put it in our springform pan. We're going to bake it for a while. Then we're going to add our pecan pie topping and bake that. If we don't do it that way, then I'm afraid the pecans will overbake and that part will be burnt before we ever get the cheesecake. If you notice, a lot of the cheesecakes recipes that you see, the pecan pie is on the bottom layer. Well, that's why, but I wanted to put the pecan pie layer on the top. So we're going to try it a different way. I think that's pretty well done. So I'm going to add the heavy cream, 1/3 cup. And it doesn't have to go so long after that. Let me scrape it down, and I think we're almost done. If I hadn't kept stopping and talking, we would already have this in the oven by now, I think. All right, just a little bit more of a whirl. And there we go. Okay. And I know a couple people who will be clamoring to lick the beaters. Or typically, they're clamoring to lick the beaters. So I'll scrape it off, but I don't usually do a really thorough job. There you go. Okay. Sometimes I have to fight with this thing to give me my cheesecake, but that time it actually worked pretty well. Let me slide this stuff out of the way. So here is the crust that David made for us. And a couple pieces are trying to escape. I think when I tipped it up, I got a little too out of hand. I'm going to stir it just a bit, make sure I've got everything off the bottom and the sides. Our oven is preheating at 350 degrees. I am not using my convection setting. That got me in trouble a little bit because people who didn't have the convection setting were having to bake things much longer. So I've been doing recipes without that setting, especially as I work on the next book, which will be out early spring of 2018. Okay. Now this is going to be delicious on its own. So if you want to stop there, you can. But I'm going to get all the goodness out, leaving my folks just a little bit to scrape and test. And I'm going to put this in the oven for about 45 minutes. That's my plan. 350 degrees for 45 minutes. And then we'll, while it's in the oven, we will actually make the pecan pie topping. Well, you'll see what it looks like at 45 minutes. And then, like I said, we'll put the topping on there and see how yummy this can be. So our butter is hot and just off the stove. And those of you said you missed the grandfather clock. There you go. Okay, I'm going to add to my hot 6 ounces of melted butter, about a quarter of a cup of water. And then I'm going to start dissolving the sweetener. Pecan pie is goo plus pecans. And so we're trying to make the goo, which is hard with low carb sweeteners. This is 3/4 of a cup of sucrin mealis. Now sucrin mealis, I'm getting it all in there too. Sucrin mealis is a powdered granulated sweetener. They call it the sugar icing or sucrin icing. I love it because it's already powdered, and I use it for icings, or for frostings and cake icing. It works really great in this because you're going to avoid the gritty. If you don't have the sucrin mealis or the icing sugar, you can take any granulated sugar, put it in the blender, measure it first, put it in the blender and powder it, and then use that. But I'm using that. I'm also using a second sweetener. I want to do it while the butter's warm so to help it dissolve. This is a brown sugar substitute called Sucrin Gold. I love my Sucrin Gold, and it looks like this. Now, If you don't have sucre and gold, you can use some granulated sweetener and maybe a little, maybe half teaspoon of molasses, or just leave it out. But it gives it kind of that nice, rich brown sugar flavor, and it's made with erythritol, and so it generally is safe for diabetics. So I'm making sure this is dissolved. Now, if I wasn't doing a video, I would probably have it on low heat on my stovetop. I'm going to add salt. This is a teaspoon of salt. Remember, I'm using unsalted butter. If you use salted butter, you might want to forego the salt, or lessen it, maybe half it. This is a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. And we're trying to deepen the flavors here because we really don't have a corn syrup or a syrup that will caramelize. So, well, if it does, it gets gritty. So we're using 3 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And I'm using maple extract, and this is really the game changer. This is what makes it so yummy and gives it that more authentic syrupy kind of taste. And this is 2 full teaspoons of maple extract. So let's add that in there. So I want to keep it warm, but it's off the heat. So if I was still at the stove, I would bring it over to, or I would take it off the heat at this point, and I would add my eggs. I've had it off the heat long enough that it's safe to add the eggs. But just in case you don't, what you don't want to do, you want to have your eggs sitting out so they're relatively room temperature. Then you add them in, and as you add, you whisk. What you don't want to do is put your cold eggs, or any egg, into really hot, because then you're going to have like the equivalent of egg drop soup, which you do not want. So we're going to whisk as we pour without trying to make too big of a mess. Ideally, those should have been beaten before I put them in here. I didn't follow my own instructions, so beat the eggs before you put them in. I thought about it as I was adding them, and I love using a whisk. It just gets everything. So remember that instead of pouring this into a pie crust, we're going to pour this on top of our cheesecake. And I do want to check it soon because I really don't want the cheesecake to be browned at all. I want it to just start to set before I pour this in. Now, I'm putting in pecans. These are 3 cups measured pecans. When I did them, they were not 1.5 pounds. So it's so important. It underscores to me the importance of weighing pecans, or weighing ingredients, rather than just measuring them, because that measures to 3 cups. But when I weigh it on my food scale, it comes out to about 9 ounces. So you could probably get away with 8 ounces of pecans, and that's going to cost you a lot less to make this dish. The other thing I did to the pecans, I did roast them. I just put them on a baking sheet like this and put them in the oven at 250, 275 for about 20 minutes. And they just get lightly browned, and it's just going to be a much nicer flavor when you put them in the pie. So this is basically our pecan pie filling with the egg. And you can see there won't be a ton of goo, but we're going to have that wonderful layer of cheesecake. So I'm going to set that aside and let those pecans just kind of swim a little bit in that sweet, sweet sauce. And then I'll check the cheesecake and see if it's ready for us to pour it on top. So it's been in for 30 minutes, and it's absolutely perfect, I believe, for what we're trying to do. I'm going to do this gently. I'm going to start with the pecans and just kind of smooth them out. Now, how did I know? I did 30 minutes at 350 degrees, and it was just still jiggly in the center, but it's not like wobbly, and I can touch it. See, I can touch it just a bit, and it's a little springy. I don't want to be heavy-handed with this. I want to be gentle because it will collapse and it will fall. It's at probably a pretty critical stage right now to be pulling out of the oven. But I'm going to do the pecans, and I'm just spooning them over because I don't want it to collapse. I don't want to pour it in all at once for sure. It's like playing Jenga. You pull out the pieces, or what's the other game besides Jenga? The pick-up sticks, where you don't want anything to move. And once I get the pecans kind of over, man, this looks good. I don't care if you like pecan pie or not, this looks good. And you know what, I probably should have used, I may not get to use all this, I probably should have used only 2 bricks of cream cheese because I don't know that my springform pan's going to handle all this. All right, I'm going to fish these out. put these guys on, and I'm going to stop with the syrup. But I'm going to save the syrup for later. Oh, there's some sugar. Okay, let's see if I can get this back in the oven. Hi, we have our pecan pie that we made yesterday, and yeah, I'm wearing the same shirt. And Grace has agreed to try it with me. She said, Mom, what if I don't like it? And I'm like, well, you can say yuck, it's okay. Banjo wants to be in. He had some dental surgery today. He wants to be with us. So it came out clean. I ran my knife around it. You want to try it, Gracie, just in case?
Okay.
I ran my knife around it to see. David's waiting for it. I'll hand it off to Daddy. Yeah, you want to try that? I don't know what that's going to be like. So I haven't made this before, so we're all kind of finding it out at the same time. Winston's nose is there. I'm afraid that long tongue is going to reach right up and take a bite. So this is how it looks. You actually can see a little bit of a layer of pecan pie with the cheesecake. And so what I'll do, I've never been good at this. I'm just going to put it up here for the sake of the video. But you can just peel that off and put it right up on the cake stand. Okay, Grace, you want to try it?
Sure.
So this is a pecan pie cheesecake. Actually, I'm going to use a serrated knife because I know this is a steak knife, but I think it will work better to chop through the pecans. And I've had this out of the fridge now for, gosh, probably an hour. So it's not cold. And I always try to visualize what a slice would look like. I'm nervous about what this is going to be like, what it's going to taste like. So this would be a 1/4. This would be an 1/8. So I'm going to go like this for a 1/16. How's that? Okay, it does look good. The pecans are wanting to bop around a little bit. The dogs are all over us. And I cut this a lot bigger than I thought I had. I think this is more of an 8. This is really, I think, 2 pieces, Grace. Wow, it looks really good. Winston. Winston rushed up, a pecan fell into thing. That looks really good. Is that like pecan pie down there? It looks like some filling got down at the crust. I don't know. I'm going to hand it to Grace. And you can have whatever amount and then share with Dad. So I probably, yeah, that's probably an 1/8 of a cheesecake. So I'm going to cut this and I'll cut it again. And I didn't make any coffee. What do you think?
I like it. I like the pecans on top a lot.
Can you taste any of the pecan pie? Actually, I'll cut it from this side. Not really. I really goofed up.
Not a lot of it.
Not a lot. I goofed up because I had too much filling. And I think if I made it again, I would do just 16 ounces of the cheesecake, of the cream cheese. Make a little smaller cheesecake filling. It's all falling apart. And then have more room for the pecan pie. So what do you think? You're going to hand it off to Dad. Let me try a bite. I swear this looks like the pecan pie filling. Look. How did it get down there? I think it's really good. You don't love it?
I like it.
You like it.
I'm not a caramel person.
You're not a caramel person. That's right. Dad is the caramel person. I think it's really good. I think I need to play with the amounts of the cheesecake and the filling, and I can adjust that. So if you want to make it, look in the video description. I'll put the written recipe. Follow the written recipe, not what I did. I think this is really good.
I like the pecans a lot.
I can tell. What do you think, David?
The pecan pie is delicious. I love it.
I really think this is going to be something to do. There's not enough, or something to make again. For some reason, it looks like the pecan pie. See there, look. Some of the goo went down to the bottom. How did that? That's magic, because I baked it and then poured that on top. So I don't know how the goo got between the cheesecake and the crust, but That's really good. The solution may be to put the pecan pie filling on the bottom and put the cheesecake on top. I wanted to have the cheesecake filling on top, but that might not be practical. But I can honestly say...
I mean cheesecake on the bottom.
No, put the pecan pie on the bottom and because what I did was I put the cheesecake on the bottom and the pecan pie on the top. And I'm saying...
Then it got there anyway.
Yeah, it got there anyway. So I may as well start with it on the bottom and put the cheesecake on top. This is really good. I love the flavors. Sorry, it's not perfect, but I believe what I put in the written description you'll be able to follow. I hope that if you make this for your family, that they enjoy it.